Happy Thursday, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Lean Coaching for Lean Coaches. We have made it. We've made it to Thursday. We are now 60% of the way through the week. Actually, my good friend Holly would say by the end of today, we're only 50% of the way if you go from Monday to Sunday. So go ahead and let that be a mind bender for you by the time you get through this evening at the typical 9 to 5, if you aren't already there and you're around the world, not in the Pacific or Eastern Standard Time zones. But enough of that talk. Thanks again for being here. So excited to have a conversation today with you. And that's exactly what I want it to be, a conversation. Because we've been in this space here on most Thursdays over the last couple of months talking about subjects for us as lean coaches, lean consultants, as we're thinking about going forward on our journey. And the topic that's come up a lot, and that's the topic that I want to talk about with you today, is marketing, lean marketing as lean consultants and coaches. This is something that I hear over and over and over again. And this is what I love helping folks with on their journey, is helping them get clarity on this and move forward and take action and start meeting with folks, their ideal clients, having conversations with them, and actually turning that into folks that they're supporting. So today, it's an ask anything. It's an open mic type of scenario. So I'm going to be um, looking for you to drop questions in the comments. So we will go ahead and be refreshing here. But again, this is my jam. This is what I love talking about with folks. For those of you that may not know my story, I actually started out growing up as 6, 7, 8, 9, having radios on all around the house. In fact, I think legend has it that I had 3 radios on, one in the kitchen, one in my bedroom, and then one in my parents' bedroom, all tuned in to different sports games, sports teams here in the Portland area. I think the Portland Beavers, the Portland Winterhawks, and the Portland Trailblazers, all on at the same time. And I just absolutely loved the idea of the communication. You felt a relationship with the person that was there. And as I grew older, I actually really fell in love with this idea of being on the radio, sharing something, because there's something very different and unique about radio. I went to school for radio. I was actually, curiously enough, looking to go to school to be an engineer. I loved math, surprise, surprise, and getting to know how things worked. But I had such a huge heart, right, for this idea of communication, storytelling, and I didn't really get it, why that was meant so much to me, until I was in the radio broadcasting program. Like I had put in an application for going to an engineering school, going to school for engineering, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But my heart was really in radio. So there was a radio program here in the Pacific Northwest at Mount Hood Community College. And I got to go to that. I got a scholarship to go. And I remember one class, we're reading this book by an author named Marshall McLuhan. He's big into media and kind of the philosophy behind it all. This was like 25 years ago. But I remember in his book, the phrase that stuck out to me is the medium is the message. And in radio, versus say TV or video or streaming, the technology really is not apparent to you. So there's this idea of building relationship. Now you might be saying to me, Sam, what the heck does this whole story about your experience going into radio, going to school for getting your degree, have to do anything with lean marketing? Well, I just to give you context, right? Of I've been down that road before. I understand what it means to communicate to an audience, to make sure that when you're standing in front of somebody, like in radio, you're not really standing in front of them, but you need to have a picture of who that person is that you're talking to. You need to be clear about who that person is, because if you don't, then the language that you're using, the stories that you're telling, the news stories that you're bringing up, they're not going to resonate with the people. They're not going to hit home, and they're not going to stay tuned. They're not going to keep the radio on for longer than a few seconds, and then they're going to switch to the static. And it's just like here on LinkedIn. You know, there's literally a billion people on LinkedIn. It's freaking crazy. A billion people. And it just blows my mind. So if you're out looking for your next opportunity, or looking to start your business, or you have, it is so vitally important that you are very clear on who it is that you're talking to. And so that's why I love doing this. I love the idea of having a conversation with you, and meeting you where you're at. That's why I'm bringing this conversation forward. And so would love to hear from you. What are those challenges or questions or things that you're, bouncing around or going on in your head? I love the phrase, what's keeping you up at night? That's a great, great question. One that I actually should be using more often, to be quite frank. But what are those questions that you have about marketing, about sales, about branding? That is my jam, because after going to school for radio, I got an opportunity to work in a couple radio stations. And then slowly after that, I met a good friend of mine who I'm still friends with today, and went to go work at a radio advertising agency. And there we did campaigns to help raise money for churches, nonprofits, like rescue missions. And we'd do campaigns where we'd go out and we'd get um, interviews with folks, especially who were like on the streets and were really struggling and suffering, but would come into a rescue mission, would get a meal and have a conversation with somebody. And that would make all the difference to them. And that would be the jump start to, getting more help, taking advantage of more services, getting into the program, starting recovery, and eventually, getting back up on their feet, finding a job, finding a place to live, those sorts of things. But the great thing about that was the experience I got in being able to get those interviews and put them together and tell a story. Because that's what people in marketing that I think we miss, is the power of story. And we talk about in the lean world, the voice of the customer, right? And so when we're looking at being on LinkedIn or other social media, wherever we're at. And it's so important that we're talking to people in stories. If we're just, I was talking to a client of mine the other day, and they were putting together their newsletter. And as they wanted me to kind of go over it and give them some feedback. And as I was reviewing it, and she was saying, yeah, this kind of feels like a white paper. And I think as, continuous improvement lean folks, we can be used to used to doing like the facts and the figures and writing out the reports, but people aren't responding to that, right? People aren't going to be engaged with um, just facts and figures. People are drawn in by stories because they can put themselves in it. And Will, thanks for chiming in here. What do I think with regards to marketing? I like to apply more 80-20 ask answer. Yep. And with the automation. So I really, really like this. So I'll just go ahead and put it in on so we can kind of all see here. it's not displaying, but Will's chiming in and asking, what do I think with it? Yeah. The 80-20 rule, with asking and answering, I think that's great, right? We can, um, be in, I guess it depends on the context. Maybe you can kind of share more about the context that you're thinking of there when you're talking about the 80-20. Will, um, having that ask with some automation. So are we talking about kind of on like a website? Are we talking like where you have like a chat bot that's there to offer some, automated support, with questions that are just like trying to get some information? Because I definitely have seen those as tools that are out there to help. Um, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I definitely, I use automation in terms of, helping me come up with story ideas and write content. I have that, taken advantage of that. So that's definitely helpful, in terms of being able to, help spur on other ideas or cut down the time to write your content, like write posts or write newsletters. So that's definitely, helpful. I think that there is something to be said too about, um, having skills in, uh, writing stories. Um, ask answers in the shared. Um, oh, the which Sheridan book? Is this? I know Rich Sheridan, who's written Joy Inc. Is there a different book? Um, and maybe you could share more about that. But I like asking and answering, spending 80% of the time asking questions and 20% of the time answering them. I think that really speaks to me, like having confidence in your, um, abilities, because I think too often in like engineering and lean spaces, we're so, and this is, I'm raising my hand on this, not like pointing fingers, because this is a challenge for me too, like feeling like I always have to add the answers. But really, asking a good question builds, they ask, you answer. Okay, I'll have to look that one up. That sounds like a good one. Okay, make a note of that, people. Book recommendation. They ask, you answer. Um, that's great. Okay. Um, Yeah, that's I love it. I love that. I'm all about the focusing on the voice of the customer and hearing from them. And the only way that we can do that is by asking. And I think we really, really miss that in, the in this world, because I think honestly, if we get down to brass tacks, a lot of it has to do with insecurity, because we're scared if we don't have the answers readily available that people are going to see through us, like, oh, well, why would I trust them and pay for their services if they can't give me the answer to my problem? Um, and so that 80-20 rule can be really a struggle, right? Spending 80% of the time asking questions. And that's definitely a thing for me that I've had to let go of. And I still try to like hold on to it with my cold dead hands. Because it's so easy. It's so easy to do that. Um, but yeah, that voice of the customer is so, so critical. And I feel like I hear too often from folks, well, I don't know where to start. I need to hear more from them, and wondering how to do that. And, sounds like a great resource here too that Will's given us. But man, I think that's just, yeah, that's it. It's really getting me here, sitting with that and making sure that we're spending the majority of our time, um, you know, asking questions. So thanks for sharing all those, resources there for sure. Like this, 80-20 in sales and marketing is a great book as well. Wow, you got I love these resources we're all getting here. And like I said, the reason why I bring this forward, this topic, is because I just see so many challenges and I get so many questions from folks, people that are really scared, and they'll say, I'm a lean person, not like a salesperson, or a lean person, not in marketing. And I think we can use those as excuses and blocks to not move forward and try things. Um, can be nested for a better effect. Um, yeah. So that focus, voice of the customer, and when we think about I think about marketing and sales, and we think about it using these tools that we have or we've learned and applying them to our sales and marketing, and that problem solving, right? Like um, getting clear on where we want to be, what our ideal state is, and understanding where we're at now with that, and then figuring out little milestones and doing experiments. And we can apply that, that problem solving, A3 thinking, improvement kata type of framework to marketing. We can use that framework. And I often wonder, why don't we apply? It's like it's right there in front of us. So it can be like, kind of, oh man, that's so obvious. Why didn't I do that? So if we're struggling with our marketing, you know, what is it that what's our ideal state in that space that we're looking to figure out? Um, and then, okay, get clear and specific about that. Um, so, yeah, 80% of revenue comes from 20% of your customers. Absolutely. Absolutely. That 80-20 rule, the whole Pareto principle, and finding who your customer is too. That's like really key, right? Who is that customer that you're talking to? Um, and then being clear and speaking to them. Yeah. And you might find that 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of your customers. That's true. That could be the case. It's possible. I suppose it would depend on, are you doing, you know, individual, like one-on-one type coaching? Are you doing more like group facilitation? Are you going in and consulting in an organization where you're spending 6 months to a year, and you just have one main customer? That could be the case too, as well. So finding that data, that's a great point right there. Being able to look at the data and go, okay, where is my money coming in from, my revenue, and then that can tell you a story too, right? And look at um, those people, those 20%, like you're sharing there, and like, what are their common um, challenges? What are their frustrations? What are the things that get them excited? And looking at them, and then as you're doing your marketing, you can really look at, okay, am I speaking to them, right? When I'm talking to them, when I'm telling my stories, when I'm posting, when I'm having conversations, am I addressing those challenges and pain points? And again, I think we can we do ourselves a disservice because we start speaking to challenges that really aren't that those aren't the things that they're dealing with. And so we wonder why we're not having people that are coming into our world, right? That people aren't messaging us, or when we're messaging them, they're turned off and they're not wanting to talk to us because they don't feel like we are relatable to them, that they don't feel like that we get them. I posted about this maybe a few weeks back, but that phrase that we want people to hear when they get off a conversation with us, whether it's a DM or a sales call or however it might be, um, is, they get me, he gets me, right? And people will continue to message. They're not going to continue to message you and have a conversation with you if they're like, this guy is like, he's just out to prospect. He's baiting and switching. Like he's just trying to pull one over my eyes. Like people aren't going to continue to come back if they don't feel like they're understood. Yeah. Asking that question, man, if I've got all these kind of people in my world that resonate, how can I get more of those? That's exactly it. Will, man, you're dropping some serious science here. So how can I attract more of those? So using that 80-20 rule that's a great jumpstart for anybody here who's like wondering, and I know too, for those, maybe my coach had turned me on to Alex Hormozy. You can find him all over TikTok, Instagram, I believe. He's on YouTube Shorts for sure. He's on LinkedIn as well. But he's big into business and marketing and leads. And he has this like 15-minute video where he talks about how you get your first 5 customers. And I love the framework he uses because it's basically about finding your biggest list of people that whether it's in your like phone book, is it on LinkedIn, is it on YouTube or Instagram, and then you have your offer, your framework you're going to use, whether it's the one-on-one or group coaching or a course or whatever it might be, and you're going to offer something to them. And initially he's talking about a free offer, right? If you're just jump starting, and he says you get that one, you pick that one area, whatever area it is, whether it's your phone list or it's your LinkedIn or whatever it might be, and then you message, I don't know, a few hundred of those with an off, like you get to know them first, like you're building a relationship, you're not just cold whatever, right? You're offering, you're re-engaging in a conversation with them. And then once you built that personal rapport, and it needs to be someone that would be a ideal person that is fitting the offer that you're making and is your ideal person, then you offer that support for free with like 3 conditions. Hey, I need these 3 things from you. I'm going to offer this to you. And you'll get it all for free, whatever that is. But number 1, I'm going to need feedback, throughout the process. Number 2, I'm going to need you to follow the process that I'm giving you here. And number 3, I'm going to need a recommendation if it's helpful for you, which of course, it's ideally you're going to provide value. And so I love that framework that Alex Hormozy offers there. And I'll put a link to it in the comments. But Will, yeah, meeting the person, I like to meet in person and do a walkthrough. Yeah. And I suppose that depends too on who your client is, right? And what your idea, like if we're in a virtual world, that would make sense maybe. But meeting, right, in person, right, having a conversation, right? I'm always like, if I'm having a DM conversation with someone that I know that I can support in a meaningful way, then I'm always looking to take it to a conversation, not just do the sale right there in the DM. Like that is not, you can't get to know somebody and their challenges that they're having. Again, if this is a one-on-one, mine is a one-on-one context. It's going to probably be different for if you're in an organization, but still you're going to be meeting with a person to offer your support for the organization. So you need to get to know them so that that there's going to be a meaningful support. And I love that, Will, too, in terms of when you're having that conversation, having something that they can immediately apply. This is something I learned kind of the hard way. I had a conversation with somebody where I was offering support to them. This was probably, like 6 months ago, maybe. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, hey, would you be interested in knowing how I could support you? And they're like, actually, no. And one of the reasons why is that I was looking in this conversation to I was looking to take away something um, from our conversation so that I could know, like, hey, when we work together, basically you would offer something that would be helpful to me. And so ever since then, that's something that I'm always looking to do, Will. So that's a great tip, right? Give the person something that they can um go, and they're like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, they can actually help me. As you said, you're going to be a resource of value to me, right? And I think that that's something too, that like you offer that resource, and then also depending on if you're a coach or whatever, again, having those good questions to ask, like you said before, like the 80-20 piece, right, where you're listening and you're asking those questions. Um, and I think that that's so important. And then having a one pager, yeah, absolutely. Having I have a little survey I'll send to folks, just a Google form with a handful of questions, maybe three or four, just to give you an idea of where people are at. And people have done that. They've maybe said, hey, this isn't a fit for me, or they might answer a question so you can have like an idea, like what's the problem you're struggling with the most, what's got you in the place of looking to get support. And absolutely, we have to know that they're at a if they're at on a pain scale, if it's 1 to 10 and they're at a 2, there's not going to be any motivation to take any action, right? But if they're at like a 8, 9, 10, then they're ready to start, you know, doing something. So that's the last thing you want to do, is having a customer who's like, well, I kind of, sort of should maybe possibly do that. That's not going to be enough. They're not enough pain yet. That's it. Right. And being able to, when you're having that conversation, um, get them to really surface what their challenge is. Like, hey, in a year from now, if you don't do anything, what's life like? And if it's like, well, it'll be okay, like it'll just be fine, like nothing's really gonna, it's not a big deal, then like there's nothing there for them to motivate them to take action. So yeah, this is really, really good. Um, so thank you to all who have showed up. If you got one last question you want to drop in, please do that. We got like another 2 minutes here. But this is what I love doing. These are the kind of conversations I love having, and I'm on the journey too. I'm discovering, I'm learning, I'm experimenting as I go with my marketing, with my sales. And so these kind of conversations are fun because I'm learning too as I go. What I love, my wife, she is a very successful consultant in a different space. Um, but one of the things that I love about her is that she doesn't call herself an expert, or I'm certified, or I've got my master's degree in this. Um, she calls herself a practitioner. And I absolutely love that, because it basically is putting you in the place of, I'm always learning, and I'm actually practicing, right? I'm not just studying, I'm actually out practicing. And that's what I love about this as lean folk. That's who I resonate with, is folks who are struggling like I am in this world, trying to continue to move their business forward and help and support folks. But we're out practicing and experimenting. We're not just like, oh, like we're actually practicing. Um, the absolute worst idea in sales, and my a fun thing to try. Oh, yeah, that's great. Well, if you all are like, this is fun, I could use that kind of support and reflection and questions that you offered. That's what I do. Please shoot me a DM and we can have a conversation and explore working together. I love, love, love helping and supporting folks through this. This is my jam. This is what I love doing. Will, thank you for being here. For all of you who came here today, we'll be back on Tuesday for another lean coaching for lean coaches. Jonathan Gossett, who I am just getting to know. We're going to have lots of fun with him and diving into the challenges he's facing. But again, loved having you here today. All the great questions. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Let's keep it going in the comments. If you have other questions that come up after this that please drop them in there and we'll keep this conversation going. Have a fantastic weekend, y'all. And we'll be back here again on Tuesday. Take good care. Be well.